Hello everyone, I hope you've been having a good week and that the Pesach cleaning hasn't proven too stressful. And actually on the subject of Pesach cleaning, this brings us to one of the strangest aspects of this wonderful Yom Tov of Pesach, in which we celebrate our Exodus, Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because we call this Yom Tov Chag HaMatzos, the festival of Matzot. And of course matzah is central to the mitzvahs of Seder night, and ridding our house of chometz is central to the preparation for Pesach. But why are matzah and chometz so important? Why are they the symbols of our redemption and all the miracles that occurred? Now I know, as we say in the Seder, that the matzah was produced because when they left Egypt in a rush, they didn't have time for the dough to rise. But why is this seemingly side aspect of the story so central to what Pesach is about? Now there's a number of answers to this question, but I want to give one which was already said by the classic commentaries, but perhaps is better understood now in light of modern historical research. Because you see, for the Egyptians, bread wasn't just an aspect of society, it was central to their self-image and how they viewed their civilization. The Egyptians were very proud of the culture and life they had created, order out of the chaotic nomadic lifestyle which they saw around them, settling in the massive oasis which is Egypt, and learning to channel through canals the waters of the Nile and so build their lifestyle. We know they despised the wandering nomads around. Toavas Mitzrayim, when the brothers of Yosef came down to Egypt, they were put to the side because the Egyptians had an abhorrence of the chaotic lifestyle they saw around them, and they built their whole civilization, their whole theology around this hierarchical structure that was Egypt, with Paro and the gods at its head. And the Egyptians were also the discoverers of the technology that allows fermentation to occur and bread to be made. It was almost the high-tech of their day. Because you see, fermentation is a natural reaction. When you mix flour with water, or indeed any carbohydrate, fermentation occurs and carbon dioxide is produced. What's unique about the grains, wheat and barley, is that because of the glutinous molecular structure of the dough, the carbon dioxide produced is trapped and bubbles into the dough and causes it to rise and become fluffy bread. But any carbohydrate mixed with water will produce this reaction. Just if it's rice or potatoes, the carbon dioxide will escape. Whereas with a grain dough, it's trapped and produces bread. But the reaction takes time to occur, it's quite slow, and by the time it's occurred, very often the dough will have been ruined. So the Egyptians discovered a way to speed it up, using what chemists will know as a catalyst, or biologists call an enzyme, and what we nowadays use for yeast. Nowadays we use yeast, which is a modern variant of yeast, but the Egyptians used sourdough, which was basically dough left to go mouldy, which then produced the catalyst which sped up the reaction, and therefore they were the inventors of modern-day bread production. Until then, people made bread generally like the nomads do to this day. You can see the Bedouin doing this, in which they mix flour and water, produce the dough, slap it on the side of a brick or stone oven, and you have a lafa or pita. So risen bread is the symbol to the Egyptians of their culture and status. In fact, the level that they refined the flour was also important to them. When you grind flour with stone, it gets little bits of the stone in it, and you have to filter or sieve it out in order to produce good quality flour. And we know again from teeth damage in the archaeological record that lower status Egyptians had a rougher flour with more stone in that damaged their teeth, and the higher you are in the Egyptian hierarchy, the better the flour you had. This helps us understand why, incidentally, why the butler and the baker were important court officials in Paro's court as per the Yosef story, because both of them involved high-tech. The Egyptians weren't the invention of fermentation of winemaking, but they certainly were involved in winemaking, and bread making was also a high-tech post and an important post in the Egyptian culture because of bread as the symbol of the civilization they were so proud, and their invention of the process. We also understand why Paro got so upset when the baker left some stone in, because he saw this almost as an insult to his status. He was clearly serving unrefined bread, flour, rather than the refined flour that upper-class Egyptians were meant to receive. But we now understand why lechem only, why matzah, unrisen bread, was a symbol of the scorned status that the Jews had as nomadic wanderers who had arrived in Egypt. We call ourselves Ivrim, And the Egyptians used a very similar word, which we now know from the records, aviru, to refer to the aliens from outside their culture, who were wanderers and nomads and didn't have a settled civilization. And that's what the Jews were. They were despised outsiders, therefore only deserving of being matzah rather than bread eaters. And here we get to the brilliance of the symbolism of matzah and chometz for Pesach. Because the very symbol of our affliction, of our lowly status, of our inferiority and our slavery, is what we then took and used as the symbol of our freedom. And this is what true redemption is, taking the narrative that's used to scorn and despise and realizing how that is our very pride. Yes, we say on Yitzias Mitzrayim, we're not going to eat your bread which is the symbol of the decadence, the pursuit of luxury, the evil and corroded immorality at the core of Egyptian life, in which status and hierarchy is abused and twisted into persecuting those who are weaker and who are the strangers amongst you. Ervas Haaretz, Egypt is described as a decadent land of immorality and impropriety, and we're not going to adopt this, we're not going to buy into this. And therefore the symbol of the lechem oni, the symbol of our lowly status, is the very food we eat when we finally achieve freedom and redemption. So this is what Pesach is about. Of course, most of the year, we can engage in the world and that which it has to offer. Of course we should eat bread, of course we can eat bread. We can enjoy the fruit and products of this world. But for 7 or 8 days we need to step back. For 7 or 8 days we need this detox from chometz. We need to recognize that luxuries are wonderful if appreciated, but dangerous if taken for granted. Dangerous if they become decadent, if they become a pursuit of materialism and pleasure just for its own sake, and allow us to become Egyptians, Mitzrayim, absorbed in a culture of persecution, decadence, and immorality. So this is what Pesach's about. Chag HaMatzos, the 7 days when we rid our house of chometz, when we free ourselves of that leavened bread, that symbol of materialism and decadence, and only eat matzah, the lechem oni, the bread of affliction, the bread of modesty, the bread that avoids pursuit of materialism, that recognizes that sometimes there's sacrifices and things that we give up in life before we can then go back to eating bread again through the rest of the year. So as we engage in cleaning our house for Pesach, as we work through all the minutiae of details of halacha, absolutely important to get Pesach right, we also need to think what the underlying value that we're reflecting is, and realize the beauty of the message of Pesach, the symbolism of the matzah that's moved from lechem oni, the poverty and deprivation that we suffered through no choice of ours, through to the lechem of freedom, the bread of freedom, in which we choose not to immerse ourselves in luxury. Have a wonderful Yom Tov, and looking forward to seeing you over Chag, and looking forward again to addressing you over Chol HaMoed once Yom Tov, the first days of Yom Tov are passed. But in the meantime, I wish you Shabbat Shalom, have a good Shabbos, a good Yom Tov, and a kosher Pesach.